Good evening and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the education and empowerment and regarding substance use disorder. There's such a shame and stigma regarding this disease, and it's very much misunderstood. It's not a moral failing. It's not a choice that anyone makes. You may make one unhealthy decision that ignites a disease in your brain. And we really need to have empathy and compassion and sympathy for people, and especially their families struggling with substance use disorder. It leads the entire family down a very chaotic road, and people get lost, and people lose faith, and many egregious things happen to a family during this outrageous time. It's chaos with a capital C, and beyond anything that you could possibly really acknowledge. Having lost my son 6 years ago and having lived through the disease and the insanity of it, and now, coping with the grief and dealing with not having my middle son out of my 3 children here on this earth, I find it more and more important to educate people and make sure that not one more family goes through this horrible roller coaster ride. My very special guest tonight is Mr. Paul Ferretti, and Paul and I are working at Good Sam Hospital doing the Sherpa program, and Paul is a recovery coach, and he handles the identified person, and Thomas's Hope is taking care of the family, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch, somebody kind of breathe through, right? Those first steps during a crisis.
Yeah, the most important part of that is hope.
Yes.
Giving them hope that there's support there.
Yes.
The unfortunate circumstances is that, in the cases of, especially in the emergency room, their fear is, being released and having to go do whatever they do again. And, they put us in a place now that we can not only give the patient themselves the support, but also the family support is a big factor, to help the family and guide them to an understanding of, they're not alone also,
They're not alone, just having lived through all of that and no one ever being there, you're always looked at and you can feel the scathing judgment looking at you, that you're a bad parent, that you're this, that you're that you're 100 different things, and it's the furthest thing from the truth. And also the identified person. They're looked at as somebody less than all the time. And it's great to be able to really educate the staff there a little bit more.
Yes, that's been fantastic.
And just maybe soften their viewpoint on things.
Well, that's what I'm finding now. As we've been working there, they're starting to become more compassionate.
Yes.
They're speaking to us in reference as they're people too.
Yes.
And they're there and they're sick. They're allowing us to go in and speak with the individual on a person-to-person basis, not as an addict.
Yes.
And I believe that.
Or that ugly word, junkie.
Junkie.
Oof.
And, they've turned from the terms, the regulars, and all of these things. I think one of the impact that both the family side and our side also have had on them is giving them an understanding that, like in my case, I'm also in recovery.
Yes.
But they looked at me, a couple of people approached me and said, "You're really in recovery?" Like, yeah, and that's the beautiful part about it. It's they can recognize it just for themselves, the staff at the hospital, and also the parents, that wow, there is hope in that. That's why I started off.
There's such big, because I know this, that my son, I miss him every second of every second. Thomas on substances, I don't miss him any day of the week. He was kidnapped and was a whole different person. Heroin was his boss and his best friend, and drove every decision that he made. Not my son was the antithesis of what he was when he was on drugs.
Sure. That's why I live by a saying, no more shackles, no more chains.
Yes.
No more sorrows, I am free. Because when I was active and I was an alcoholic and, you know, I've been in recovery for many, many years, and I did have a slip up as my years went on, it brought me to a whole nother level of recovery. But even in abstinence, I was still in shackles and I was still in chains. And that's kind of the topic that we're on tonight about
Yes.
spiritual direction. You know, I was fortunate to have someone in my life that was a spiritual director and mentored me and worked with me to find that peace of recovery that I was missing, because the abstinence is just a small part of recovery. It's the beginning stage. Because the opportunity to be able to stay abstinent and change how you feel is a consistent job, just
Yes.
like anything else we do. But after a while, just like being active in my disease was natural to me, because that's what I knew, and I knew in order to survive through a day, that's what I needed to do.
It's interesting when you say so abstinence is the act of not using a drink or a drug or a pill or a potion.
Correct.
And that doesn't equate to recovery, because you can be a mean, nasty. I think they used to use the term dry drunk, right?
Correct. Yes.
Because you'd be just as nasty, because you're not focused on the new life that you're given, that you should be grateful for and enjoy life for what it is at face value. You're still focused on, I'm so angry that I'm not drinking or I'm not drugging.
Well, there's a big misconception in the public, because they talk about abstinence and recovery as one.
Yes.
And it's not. It's by any means, it isn't. You see, alcohol was my solution to my problem. It was not my problem. You know, and recovery is not just a matter of healing, recovering from the substance that you use. It's recovering from what's causing you to use the substance.
You know, and so many parents don't get that there's an underlying issue. You know, some kids do. Let's put it this way. Most kids are going to have an at-risk behavior at some point during their teenage years, because they're kids, right? They're going to make poor choices. They're going to make unhealthy choices. But there are kids that when you ask them, what's going on? You know, when I do cocaine, I feel normal. Well, maybe they have ADHD. Maybe there's an underlying issue there. And by using a substance, makes them feel
normal. Yeah. Well, we use that word normal, right? And
yeah, well, we use it very loosely.
Yes, and it has become the cliche.
Yes.
But in lieu of that, you know, everybody's normal is different.
Yes.
And a lot of times, too, there's so many deep-rooted issues and circumstances that we don't even recognize, even without even being abstinent, we don't even recognize them. I could use myself as an example. I mean, you know my story, and
yes.
You know, I couldn't understand why after 18 years or so of being in recovery, the recovery lifestyle, and I picked up a drink. I couldn't understand it, and I was doing the same things I do today that you know me to do.
Yes.
I live in a healthy, good life, working hard, taking care of my family, taking care of my children. You know, serving my church, working with others, helping others, very giving of myself. And the problem is that I wasn't taking care of myself.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is being honest with myself. You know, because when the world is spinning right, everything is okay and it's acceptable.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, there were times when I would lay my head down and just be unhappy and not really know why, because I really didn't have many problems and life was going okay.
Right.
You know, in comparison to some people's lives who are in shambles.
Yes.
And, you know, I've known quite a few people like that they're as happy as could ever.
Absolutely.
And they're happy because
So happy is subjective, isn't it?
right. Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Someone asked me once what I thought my vision of success was, and my answer to them was peace within, because without peace, nothing
Yeah.
is enjoyable. Because even anything outside of myself will only suffice for so long,
Correct.
until I don't recognize it anymore. It's like when you get that new car,
Yeah.
and you jump in it and you're driving it and the windows are down and you're smiling, the
And
sun
that
is
smell.
shining. Ah, yeah, the whole kit and
The whole-
caboodle, and
yep.
everybody, you want everybody to see it and you're so proud of it. But after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it's just like the car you got rid of
Yeah.
to get that car, because it wears off.
Yes.
Well, that's the same thing with recovery. It's a constant maintenance of your inner self. To search out what you need to fulfill you from the inside out. It's not the outside things. I don't set my moral issues and my moral opinions on anything outside of me any longer. I live for what's inside of me,
Yes.
and what I give out from inside of me to the world, and it took a lot of work, and to be able to come to terms with a lot of my underlying issues and the deep-rooted issues that I've had from my past, from growing up. When I do spiritual direction with people, it's not religious at all. Zero
No.
religion in it at all. And some people get
Spirituality and religion are two separate things. Religion is something that is man-made, that you follow along to whatever the rules of that is. Spirituality to me is that I have a direct relationship with my higher power, and we have a very personal, intimate relationship, and that's who I go to for my answers. So when you're peaceful within, the world can spin out of control, and you know exactly where to go to find yourself again.
Yeah, I have a thing I use. It's called the infinite line, and I do this in the beginning stages when I start to do spiritual direction with someone. I draw a line across a piece of paper and ask them to jot down on that paper the good things in their life and the bad things in their life, and the most powerful, how they all interject across onto that line. And in most cases, the good things kind of stay where they are until they get disrupted by one of the bad things, and it drags them in.
Yes.
And we go through that whole process from as early back as the people can remember, as the
Okay.
person can remember, up until where they are right now. And then from there, we get a kind of picture of where they're at, from one extreme to another. And then we do the same thing, but we put highs and lows with curves. And then we put impacting points in their lives, where they were high in their lives and when they felt good, and how that at certain points in their lives and what ages they were brought down and brought back up and brought back down. And that gives us a real determination of who they are, because they're molded in their lifespan. They've been molded to accommodate
Yes.
those ups and downs, and it shows them to a degree. It all depends on, in all honesty, how willing they are to work on themselves
You know,
spiritually.
spiritual.
Yeah.
And through my journey, by the grace of God, I had a good relationship prior to Thomas's passing. And through Thomas's passing, certainly we're really good friends now, because that's without a spiritual connection, you don't come through something like that and get through it.
Well, it's,
Right?
yes, it's the
So
omnipresent.
there has to be, yes, there has to be. I did a lot of work on me and a lot of work on my relationship there, because faith is seemingly easy to have when everything's going your way.
Yes.
It's when the proverbial hits the fan that you are tested beyond, and most definitely, any beliefs.
Yeah, a person's integrity, well, I should say, speak for myself, my integrity is not shown when things are good.
Yes.
It's shown when things are bad
Yes.
and rough in my life. It took me some time in building a relationship with myself before I was able to build a relationship with my higher power. Only because I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was afraid. But as the years have gone on, I've learned to just talk to him like he's just anyone else.
Absolutely.
Because he knows where I'm going and where I'm heading.
And he knows your heart better than anybody else.
Yes, yes. I even say he knows how many hairs on my head.
Yes, he does. Yes, he
Yes,
does.
he does.
And they will be counted, right?
Yes, and the beautiful part of that is that it doesn't only benefit myself in my life; it benefits so many others.
Yes.
Because it gets expressed in so many different things in so many different ways. And that's the beautiful part of living a spiritual life.
Yes.
So back to on the recovery aspect.
Yes.
There's a process like there's 12-step programs and there's therapy and there's all different ways and to get to that inner being of yourself. But from my experience and many others that I know, I could go to any program I want unless I'm totally willing to abandon myself.
Yes.
To myself and to God. Then there will be no healing in me because I'm always will be in a battle with myself.
Yes.
Fear of the unknown, fear of how I'm being judged, fear of hurting others based on how I feel my emotions, and I've learned in the years, which took some time for me, that I just don't live of the world.
Yes.
I don't live of worldly things anymore. I just live. I always think, what would my higher power want me to do today? What would he do right now?
It's a great barometer for anybody to live by, right? There used to be bumper stickers, WWJD, right? What would Jesus do?
What would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me ask you, because I've had this conversation with many people, and recovery is, I don't want to say, well, recovery is more successful when someone does embrace their higher power. Do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the truth of the matter, it's the only
It's the only way.
Anyone I know in any kind of recovery, and when I say recovery, it's not just from substances.
Right.
I know so many people in recovery from all kinds of different things. Trauma that's happened in their lives, eating disorders,
gambling, anything.
Yeah, all kinds
Anything.
of different aspects. Could be money. I mean, it could be anything that controls you from the outside in.
Yes.
Is something that you need to recover from.
Yes.
If I like to keep it in myself. If I find myself depending on something to make me feel good and whole, then I got to take a look at that.
Okay.
And that's what true recovery is. It's being mindful of where you're at. Like when we were just sharing about my relapse. As much as I thought I was doing okay, I wasn't really mindful where I was.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of circumstances and situations that in the couple of years before that were overwhelming and overbearing to me. And it was just a constant maintenance of, we'll call it insanity in my life. And wasn't of my doing, but I was the one that God put into place to maintain it all. And instead of going to him with all of it, slowly but surely, I started depending on myself again.
Yes.
And
yourself gets you in trouble all the time.
Doomed from the start. Doesn't even matter.
I get myself
I'm doomed.
into trouble all the time.
I am doomed, and I still fall short every single day.
Yes.
That's the beautiful part of the end of the day. I get to recognize that. I stop and I take that moment of transformation and say, I talk to God and say, if I'm not recognizing something, please help me to see it.
Yes.
So that I can be aware of it and change it.
Or when you do recognize
it,
see it, say, "Oh, I'm sorry about that today. I had a little hiccup."
Sure, but again, that's
because we're human.
Right, but that also goes back to the honesty part.
Yes.
Recovery is a constant maintenance of oneself.
Yes.
It's a maintenance of one's spirit. Recovery, the reason why abstinence is not the solution is because we have a spiritual malady. We have no mechanism within us other than outside sources to give us a good feeling about ourselves.
Right.
So we always go to whatever that may be. For some time in my years of recovery, it was money.
Right.
When I was younger in recovery, it was women. It was all kinds of different things that I would search outside of myself, not so much to make me feel good, but to make me feel whole and accomplished.
Interesting.
And
Because that was success in the world that you were
Yes.
living in.
worldly success.
Yes.
And that's not what we're here for.
No.
We're here to love others. We're here to take care of others.
You know, when you just said that, and that's why I work with a woman named Kim Lauby, and we do prevention together, and she talks to parents about this, that until we start to teach our young people, the inside is what the worth is, not the outside looking in, because they all take these pictures, you know, Instagram, Snapchat, all of that. They know how to take the perfect selfie. And if they don't get 400 likes in a certain amount of time, they take that picture down because then they're not worthy anymore. And that's a horrible message that we're translating to children growing up in today's world, because they are going to struggle and suffer.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
Right.
And that also, too, happens in so many other ways.
Yes.
You know, today's day is not like, you know, back when I was young, you know, we went out and played on Saturday mornings
Yes.
with our friends. When our mothers yelled down the block, we ran home because it was dinner time.
It was dinner or
Yeah,
lunchtime
well,
or whatever you
it
had
was,
to do.
you know.
Yep.
And we went out to play again. You know, we
Yes.
built relationships.
Yes.
And we built a common goal within each other. You know, nowadays there's nothing of the sort. You know,
Right.
everything. You know, you go. Sometimes I do pay attention to it, and I do my best not to judge it. But you know, I'm not attached to my cell phone. If I don't need it, I leave it somewhere.
Correct.
You know, but you know, they'll go out to a restaurant and you'll see families sitting at a table, and every single person is on their phones.
So
And
disconnected from each other.
So yeah, but then when they need someone in their family, it's an expectation because they don't have that relationship anymore.
Right.
You know, and I would love to say that everything would be different if that wasn't the case about today's technology. But in lieu of all that, just that unrecognized detachment,
Yes.
an individual, especially a child or a kid, a young adolescent growing up, relies more on technology to get them through
Yes.
than coming to dad or mom or a brother or sister and saying, "Hey, man, I have a problem."
Right.
You know, they because it's an automatic reaction. They
It's
actually feel
interesting.
like that's something
Yes.
wrong. And that's what's so great about what you guys do, because you guys bring it to a whole nother level where family is still involved. Family's still here.
Yes.
Let us, and the resources to help them to understand that they can still be part of this.
Yes, they
And the
can.
healing, you
but
know.
we each have to heal, and we're gonna, you know, when we're all in a little bit of a better place and a little healthier, right? Then we can come back together and talk a different language to one another.
Correct. Well,
A language
is the
not of
most
anger and
important part.
not a language of not of, you know, it might be, you know, for parents, it's sometimes they're grieving their child and their child is still here because their life is not, when that baby is born and you hold that baby, you dream the world for them, right? You want the best for them, whatever that means, right? And when they don't reach the expectation in your mind, then you're disappointed, or you're afraid that how are they ever going to take care of themselves? You know, all of those feelings come into play as a parent.
Sure.
Meanwhile, the siblings, they're pissed off. They're angry. Because why is this guy doing this to our family? And why is he getting or she getting all the attention?
Sure.
You know, so it's a crazy kind of walk.
Oh yeah, well, like you brought up that whole image thing. God created us in His own image, and you know, misconstrued it, but
Yes,
that's His plan for us. That
yes,
when we created us in His image was His plan for our lives.
yes.
And every time we go off the track, He redirects us. And sometimes,
If you're paying attention to the signs.
right, and sometimes when we're not paying attention to it, which I've learned from my own spiritual director, because I have a tendency to say, see, I want a teacher, but I don't always want to be taught. And still as an adult, I still
Yes.
have a funny way of just veering off every once in a while and saying, I got this, just give me a few minutes. And, he seems like he's always scooping me up, but sometimes I have to go through a serious trial in
Yeah.
order to recognize that. And I guess it's the same way with our own children, and in the same sense, growing up is not an easy thing to do.
No,
and
it isn't.
letting
And in
go.
today's world,
Yeah, and
it's even more difficult.
yeah, so that's why when I do spiritual direction with some, we focus from as far back as we can go. Like there's a step in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the 12 steps is you take an honest and truthful moral inventory of yourself. And that's difficult for people. Like it stops them in their tracks.
Yeah.
That's
It's not easy to criticize yourself. It's not easy to be honest with yourself.
correct.
Because you don't want to admit
Right.
that that's what it is.
And also the fear
Fear.
that kicks in, because you then now have to share that with someone in
Yeah.
God, and you're worried about all kinds
God's
of.
not worried about it.
Well, He already knows.
He already
it's
knows.
just
We'll be right back after this message.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had aspirations of going to an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program, just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more. And that was from the help of outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to parent support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has gotten a lot better. Because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Just this I love, Paul. I love because I know what God's done in my life. So I love to share him with everyone.
Yeah.
Because he's always available. That's for sure.
It's with us all the time. All the
Yeah,
time.
all the time.
Even when we're suffering. You know, when I was suffering from within, I used to cry out to him and I didn't hear him. And I
Right.
couldn't understand why he wasn't there. But now that I look back on things,
He was always there.
he was always there. You know, and like
You know,
going back to that image.
Having faith doesn't mean you're not going to have a bad day or bad things aren't going to happen.
No.
Having faith means that you have somebody that you can, hold on to, that's your anchor during the storm.
Yeah.
People, I've always said, I prayed, and many people prayed for a strong, peaceful Thomas. And I will say this till the day I die. I have a strong, peaceful Thomas.
Yes, you do.
I just don't ever get to question the decision that was made for him because that's none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
I will understand it one day. Today's not that day. I have a really good feeling. What it is it was our plan and our purpose for both of us long before we were ever us. So I feel actually special that we were chosen. I was chosen to be that young man's mom and to
Yes,
take
you
him where we had to go.
And you were also chosen by him to do what you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in construction my whole life. I just this year retired, and I was able to can spend the rest of my life now working with others and dedicating my time to working spiritually with others, which is my passion.
Yes.
That's the gift that I believe that God has placed upon me. And also to help people along in recovery from substance use disorder and pretty much anything that people may struggle with. And but I also went through countless trials through my entire life that molded me and taught me and made me so that I could understand most people's circumstances and situations, not just in substance use. So
Correct.
from my childhood to now. And that's kind of how I began to do spiritual direction, because when I started learning about myself and taking a look back when I thought he wasn't there, and now I look at the result, he was building a foundation for me,
Yes.
out of concrete and stone, not sand, so that I had something to stand on. So anyone that I come into contact, in most cases, I can relate to them from personal experience. It might not be the exact same circumstance or situation, but I can relate to them based on the emotion and the feeling. And that's from the heart.
Yes.
The things that happen outside of us, sometimes they're very horrible, but to be able to recognize them that God has placed somebody else in your life to be able to listen.
Yeah.
And acknowledge it.
And
you
he
know?
does take you, you know, your greatest challenges are your greatest teachers.
Yeah.
And those people that challenge you to refigure how you know, negotiate, right? Relationships with other people are your greatest teachers.
Sure. You know, I'm always open to learn.
If we're not learning, then we're not living.
No, and in that circumstance of learning, I've learned so. It took me a long time to be able to do this, and a lot of people laugh when I say it, but I question myself: am I listening or waiting to speak?
That's,
You know,
that's a biggie.
and I find the more that I listen, the more I learn about someone else, and the more I also learn about myself. Because it leaves me open-minded enough to not only connect with God, but it also leaves me open-minded enough to understand how the individual connects with their God and how far along that they are with it. When, especially as I do spiritual direction and I watch them grow.
Yes.
We grow together in it because it's so uplifting. I can't even, you know, the joy that gives me to watch somebody just smile. It's
Yes.
just such a beautiful thing. That's recovery.
That's recovery. You're right.
That's recovery, a spiritual healing, a gradual spiritual healing. With people with substance use disorder, I do a spiritual meeting, a recovery meeting over at Talbot House every week. And when I go, we talk about this stuff, and we talk about spirituality, and we talk about their spiritual awakening and the beginning stages of it. And you know, there was a time when most people who are active, the first thing when they open their eyes is the first thought that comes to their mind, their first natural thought is to figure out how they're going to be using it for the rest of the day.
Correct.
They're not worried about tomorrow's day until the middle of the day.
Right.
Today, in the morning, they're just focused on that. What am I going to do for today? And by midday, they're already trying to come up with a game plan for tomorrow's day. That's a natural reaction for them because they're physically addicted,
Yes.
they're mentally addicted, and they don't want to feel.
No, they don't. They don't want to feel emotions, and they don't want to feel the physical pain.
Right.
Because the withdrawal for their physical dependency is overwhelming.
So they say to me, and I talk to them because, you know, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is the program of AA.
Yes.
The meetings are not the program. You can go to 100 meetings a week. It's not going to keep you sober. You know, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous will keep you sober.
Those 12 steps.
Those 12 steps. The fellowship is the meetings.
Yes.
That's where you get built support groups, people that you bond with. Really, back in the 30s, the mid-30s, when AA started, the purpose of meetings was for a person who went through their steps to go to that meeting and take someone else through their steps. Today, in some meetings, it's still, we call it the old school AA. I'm an AA guy, so but nevertheless, so people have shared with me, well, do I got to do this stuff for the rest of my life? So I talk to them about it, and I say, just like it became natural to automatically train yourself to go through your days as when you were using to get through your day. And after a while, it wasn't even like real work anymore, but it was just something you did every day.
Correct.
You know? Well, that's the same thing with recovery. After a while, and you start to get I guess, some kind of grips on your spirituality, and you start to build that relationship with yourself and your higher power, whichever that may be.
Right.
You know, I don't.
Nobody tells you who your higher power is.
Right. The most important thing is I don't direct people to believe in what I believe in. I know what my belief in what my relationship is. But yours could be nature. It could be anything.
Absolutely.
But in all actuality, it's all God's creation anyway. So it doesn't matter
you'll
what
like
you
the
call
story.
it.
I had a young man at St. Joseph's, and when I was speaking to all the people in treatment, just telling, I heard God very clearly, go and kneel in front of this young man. And I was like, I'm talking in my head to him. I'm talking right now, I'm a little bit busy, but he got louder and louder, and I went and I kneeled in front of him and I held his hands. And he went and he was looking for me because I was up there for a board of directors meeting and what have you. And I spent the afternoon with him, and just overwhelming what the young man had been through and everything else. And for whatever the reason, I was there to listen. And I was talking to him about God. And then he took a rock out of it, and I still have that rock, and because it was his prized possession. I gave him a 50-year AA coin that somebody had given to me because they said I earned it because of my son and what I was doing. They gave me their coin, and I gave that to him because I just knew that he needed something. And in turn, he gave me a rock, and he said, my higher power is nature, and you are like this rock. You can go through all kinds of weather and storm and still be here. Makes me cry even to today.
It's great. That's a great story.
I was
Incredible.
so
Inspiring.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
This 21-year-old boy who looked like he was about 38 years old. But the amazing thing was, before I left the next day, I went back to find him. And I'm looking all over for him, and I'm in the kitchen, and he was standing there, and he goes, it's me. But he looked like he was 20 years old now. And I hugged him, and I said, the devil has left your body, because I had no other words for him.
Sure.
And he said, it has. I feel it. And I left there like, wow. Wow.
Yeah. It's the obedience of the Spirit.
And that's all I thought was, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for taking me on that journey, because, oh my gosh, what an eye-opening experience to watch God work like that, and to see it manifest itself, certainly physically, with this big smile. And he was so scared that his parents were coming, but he was ready for family day.
That's awesome.
It was crazy.
That's what I mean, like
yeah.
To get to share and stuff like that. And that's wholeness.
That's wholeness.
That's wholeness.
That's the hole in your heart that you're always looking to fill.
Right.
That you can't explain to people, but there's something lacking inside of you. It's not money. It's not how much you weigh, how much you're, shredded or cut or have muscles. It's not what you own, what your possessions are. It's what's inside of you.
I refuse to let the world dictate to me what my success is.
Yeah.
I won't. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. There's nothing wrong.
No, and God wants you to have nice things.
Working hard and having things, but for the right reasons.
Correct.
I guess the saying is, this is the car I drive. It's not the emblem.
Correct.
And it's, it's like, I guess in a sense, I've been on both sides of it in my life. I was pretty well off at one point in my life. And I'm richer now than I've ever was. And
you're happier now.
I'm happy, joyous, and I am free.
How is wealth measured? How is richness measured? Robin Williams, right? Died a very lonely, unhappy man. And he had possessions, he had money, he had wealth, he had fame, he had power. And that was not enough to sustain his spirit. Philip Seymour Hoffman, right?
Yeah.
That's such a great example. Sure. 22 years sober, 3 little children, Oscar award-winning actor, money and availability to treatment anywhere in the world, and the disease won.
Yeah.
And the disease won.
Because the spirit won't. It attacks our spiritual sickness, and that spiritual sickness is not allowing ourselves. You brought up before. Is it possible without God? It's not. No. You need to find your higher power, and that higher power will direct you, just like he directed you to that young man when he convicted your spirit and said, I call it obedience to the Spirit. When I'll walk past someone, and for some time, I would speak to people, and a lot of people come to me and talk to me in reference to God and, my relationship and their relationship, whether it's just in common, people I know, and or circumstances that they're going through. And I found myself saying to them, I'll pray for you. And I would walk away, and come the end of the day, I would be so overwhelmed with whatever went on in my day. In most cases, in all honesty, I didn't pray for those people. And the Spirit was convicting me in it, you know, and I took a look at some of it, you know, some of those circumstances, and every time I walked away and said that, I got like this eerie feeling,
Yeah.
you know?
I know
And,
exactly what you mean.
So my solution to that was prayer, and God spoke to my heart, and He said, pray for them on the spot.
That's what I do now.
Right,
Because I'm not going to remember.
Right, and we've done that ourselves.
Absolutely,
You know, in
absolutely.
circumstances that we've arisen, we just pray. I pray everywhere I go. Everywhere. I
there's
pray
no
over
other-
every meal.
Yep.
I pray over anything or anything, because it's just inviting God to it. You know, and committed practice to that, and being obedient to the Spirit for myself when she shares with me. I don't plan anything. Even when I meet with people, I don't. Even this show we're doing right now.
We have no idea what direction. I never know what direction it's going to take, because my prayer before doing anything is, your words, your will, your way.
Amen. Amen.
I'll know exactly what is supposed to come out of this show, and it's going to reach. If it reaches one person, then we've done a great job tonight.
I hope it does. I hope
And
it
it will.
meets many.
And it will.
You know, it's that's the whole gift of everything. The gift of recovery is consistently replenishing it by giving it to others.
Yes.
And that's the only way we maintain abstinence.
Yes.
You know, I couldn't understand when I did relapse that I was spiritually sick. I was more mad at God than I was at myself. Couldn't understand it. I worked so hard he worked so hard to change me, and then I worked so hard to prove to him that I was grateful. But here I ended up again.
Yeah.
And there was just more work to do. And he was preparing me for this season of my life.
Yes, he was.
You know, if you asked me 40 years, 30 years ago, if I would ever be doing what I'm doing, most people would have said, you're crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knew me? They would have never, my own brother saw me and he says, I like, where's my brother? What have you done with him? They're like, he couldn't believe it, you know.
Wow.
And unfortunately, he's still sick and suffering, but we
You know,
pray for him.
Yeah, and that's all we can do.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully he finds the gift that was given to you.
Yeah. I have, I'm so grateful for God to allow me to know who I truly am. I'm the man today I always wanted to be, but was just so afraid to be.
Yeah. I know
You know,
exactly what you mean.
You know, and
You know, to be able to step out in faith like that, and to do, I've done some pretty bold things, but it's only because I know the door is, there is the door. I can see it open for me, and I'm just going to step through it, and I'll do it, because I know I will either fly or I will be caught once I step off that cliff. That's all it is just be bold enough to do it, because I'll be okay.
it's a beautiful journey.
It is a
really
beautiful
is.
journey. I like that obedient spirit. It's not easy to be obedient all the time.
No, especially when he's asking a lot of you.
Yes.
Well, I find sometimes too, to be transparent in it, when I have to show him to others that will make them uncomfortable, then will make me uncomfortable.
Yes.
I've learned to just totally disregard it now, but I still go through that uncomfortable sense of how people are seeing me sometimes. But the more I practice that, the more free I become, because he wants us to show. When he puts me in that position, there's someone else there that needs to see him.
Absolutely.
And I have to see it that way. But sometimes I still
It's
get
not for you.
Right,
It's not for
absolutely
you.
not.
It's not for
Yeah.
me. It's for somebody else that needs to be. You know, when I really first really started to create my relationship with him, It would be uncomfortable. Like, you know, if someone said, well, Linda, you say the prayer. Oh, don't ask me to do that because I don't know how to do that. And you know, they said, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Just talk.
That's it.
Just talk to him.
Yeah. You got to hear me sing too in the choir. It's funny. But he made my voice just for him to hear.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Well, when I sing,
Nobody else wants to hear it,
when I
but
sing,
he
when I
does.
sing in the car, I say that to him.
But you know what? That's the beautiful part about it. And too, you know, that obedience is also powerful because the more comfortable I become with listening to him, the less I have to be pushed to hear him.
Yes.
And I get that encouragement by working with other people. Because just to see, he'll speak to my heart, you know, and I don't hear his voice. I wish I did, but because he probably got such a beautiful voice.
I'm sure he does.
But he speaks to my heart, and when I'm able to connect with an individual and look at them, and I can feel the spirit coming through me to them.
The thunderbolt for the right words to say.
Right, there you go. And just to watch an ease come over someone, or just a breakthrough, for that matter, in when we do individual spiritual direction.
It is amazing.
It's just it's a gift. I can't express the thanks I have.
I was at Seafield, the same thing, speaking to people in treatment, and there's one young girl, and she was having a very difficult time listening to my story because it was, you know, and I hear him again, go and give her a hug. Like, you know, give me a minute. But that voice gets louder, and when I gave her a hug, I felt it. It was not me hugging her.
Spirit
I felt it.
Spirit
And
was
at the
flowing
end,
through her.
when she came up and she said, I have never been hugged like that in my life, I said, it wasn't me. That was God hugging you, and he's waiting to talk to you. She looked at me, I go, you want to talk to him with me? And we just said a little prayer, and I said, he's waiting, he's listening for you, waiting for you, waiting with open arms for you for that. He's going to give you another hug.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
you know, it's those little moments in your life that you say, wow, wow, what a gift.
God moments.
Yeah,
You know,
they're overwhelming.
he's everywhere in our day.
Yes.
You know, like we can. You know, I
Well,
want.
I wish he would have been with me this morning when I forgot my pocketbook at home.
Well, that's okay. You got through, right?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
And he is everywhere. I've tried to give thanks to everything. Thank you for letting me be here today, you know. Thank you for letting me find my way here. All the simplest things, just to show gratitude in those things. Just keep your spirit encouraged and lifted all the time.
You know, if you're gonna think about something, you know what, you have the power to have a good day or a bad day as soon as you open your eyes. So if you decide in that moment, whether you stub your toe or spill a cup of water or whatever, that today is just gonna, well, then that's how the day will go. But if you just stop and you just say, could you just slow me down for a moment? I would be thankful if you slowed me down for a moment, so I'm going to sit here and talk with you, and then I'll start my day. Changes your whole perspective on life.
Well, that goes back to the infinite line I was talking about.
Yes.
It's only us that can make the decision what we let in
Yes.
to that center line. And if we stay maintained in that center line, or if we do allow one or both of the good and the bad in, because sometimes they both come in together, if we allow them in, to be able to recognize that there's a purpose in it. Not look,
Yes.
I look at it like this. He is first, you are second, and I am third. Now, most people would say you have to take care of yourself first. But I am doing that by giving him the reins. He wouldn't put me in a place that I can't handle,
That's correct.
and a position that he's not prepared for me
And he
already.
wouldn't put you in a place that you can't handle unprotected.
Correct. So by being number 3, it allows me to step back and see everything, not just what my reaction is.
Correct.
And the less I react and the more I humble myself and look past that with compassion, any circumstance.
Any circumstance.
Um,
Even somebody who cut you off in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, I used to, I'm a financial advisor, but mentoring people, and they would say, oh, they're so nasty. I just got off the phone. I go, you know, just take a step back, because you don't know what happened in that person's life today. You have no concept. There could have been a death in the family. They could be going through divorce. You don't know. So write down that the person wasn't having a good day, and in a few months, either call them back or wait to see what happens, because they will call back and say, I'm so sorry that I behaved that way that day. And thank you for understanding. Because no judgment, no criticism, right? Don't get attached to it.
Right.
That's, you know, in yoga and practicing yoga, one of my teachers, and I love this, you can never get attached to the happiest moments in your life or the saddest moments in your life, because you'll miss all the other moments.
It's
Just-
the blessings.
Just be in the moment that you're in. Don't worry about what you experienced before, and don't worry about what's going to come next week.
Very true. Very true.
Just be in that moment of gratitude, and say thank you.
Yeah. Thanks in Psalms.
Yep.
Sing to God.
Yeah.
That's what I like to do. I love singing to him. Gives me joy, you know. Dance like David danced, they say.
Yes.
You know? And,
Yes.
it's amazing because I get to share that stuff with people. And when I do that spiritual direction, or whether it's working at the hospital or just anyone.
And you have such a
it's-
beautiful gift working with people, because there's a sereneness about you. So in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of the most, you know, when someone is waking up truly from death, they've overdosed, they're in the middle of the worst battle of their life, really, fighting substance use disorder at that moment in time when they've
Sure.
reached that point. It, you know, it really doesn't get much worse than that.
No, for sure.
And to have you, and you are right here, there's such a peace about you that you bring sereneness to them. And I
Thank
think
you.
that's what they feel more than anything.
Thank you.
And they're so open to surrender.
God.
Absolutely.
Overwhelming.
But you know what? You're the willing participant. So when I say the same thing, I say I have nothing to do with it. It's only God. But you're the willing vehicle that he gets to work through.
Yes,
and
amen.
without the willing vehicle, he doesn't get to do his job.
This is true.
Right?
Yes, I am the
So
vessel.
you get a little
Little props.
Thank you so
No,
much for
thank
joining
you.
me tonight.
It's been a
because-
wonderful blessing. Thank you for having me with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I hope that, you know, there's always hope for recovery. There's always hope for tomorrow. There's always hope. Never let go of it. If you ever need any help, please, the website should be coming out any day now, but on Facebook or anything else, Thomas's Hope, send me a message. We'll get right back to you. Thank you, and have a very wonderful, blessed weekend.